What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here live with me out in Southern California. Jesse Cofield hanging out with us in the DraftKings Boston studio. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% of your first Wrangler.com order using promo code GOJO15. Great show on deck. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave us that 5-star rating. Watch us here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. DraftKingsNetwork.com. DraftKings YouTube, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Gill Alexander going to join us today as we got a little sports Equinox going down today. A little bit of everything all of the time. We might even have a little special bet card for you guys up on the DraftKings Sportsbook. But, Dad, you are back here in my apartment in Southern California. You were on the call for Westwood One last night, Sunday Night Football. Bears and Chargers that felt like a loser leaves town match if things tilted one way, and that didn't happen. But more importantly here, can you tell the people how well taken care of you have been on this trip? For anybody that was here last time, and Jesse, you can bear witness to this for us. My dad did a lot of complaining the last time he was here.
Yes, and there were some very specific grievances that he had against you, basically. And it sounds to me, before the show, we got into it a little bit, that these grievances were answered on this trip.
Well, it's like a writer almost for someone who thinks they're a celebrity and walks into a photo shoot or an appearance on a late night show where they've got these demands for all these things that are supposed to be in their trailer. It's embarrassing.
If you're talking about demands being the necessities, then okay. Luckily, your mother sends a forever roll of toilet paper, or God knows there'd never be toilet paper here.
Wait. Your wife sends GoJo toilet paper?
No. This is what happened. Make it sound like my mom mails me toilet paper, you maniac. My mom, for Christmas one year, this is probably 5 years ago, decided to get us a subscription to a toilet paper roll service. It is, I'm not going to give the brand credit, but it's something called the Forever Roll. Yeah. It's basically a toilet paper roll, and I'll get one during the body of the show to show you guys. It's about the size of a hubcap.
Yeah.
And it comes with a special holder on it, and you get 3 in a box on an occasion. So I was getting this when I lived in a home, and I was getting this when I lived by myself. And so these started to stack up after a while. I had a lot of them. And so finally, I cut the service off last year before I moved, and literally moved Jesse in a U-Haul with a lot of my stuff that included about 15 of these Forever Rolls that I now have in storage in my closet. And so whenever we hit the apocalypse and we're all looking for the things that we can bring into the new world, that currency, usually, again, ammunition, water, and fuel, if you're people keeping score at home trying to doomsday prep, but I got your poo wipe, I got it in droves.
Nice. That's elite. That's elite.
That's all she can say on that one is nice.
Well, I'm just imagining, like, if you, so this is in your bathroom, this giant toilet paper.
Stacks of it in his closet.
But, like, you have a giant roll next to your toilet, right?
Yeah, yes. Giant roll.
Giant roll.
Okay, so I'm just imagining, like, being a girl and, like, I don't know, like, you go over to a guy's house, maybe you guys went to dinner, maybe you're going to have a drink back at your place, and you have to use the ladies' room, and you go in and there's just a massive toilet paper thing. Like, that's a good conversation starter.
So my thought is, and I wonder what yours, if you walked into that situation, mine is well prepared.
Yeah, mine is... Yeah. Is he okay? Like, is there something wrong? Yeah. He eats a lot of fiber. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Good diet. Yeah. But for I mean, as I said last time, I hear necessities. There was nothing to eat, nothing to drink. If I didn't make coffee, I'd have nothing to drink. I had to buy a couple of sport bars at a local, whatever thing, a sports bar, whatever. That's all I could think of.
Naturally, we called our stuff Gatorade.
Sports bars. So I had to get those. So at least he did have a couple of bars, still not a lot to drink. And he does let me sleep in the bed, but it's all deflecting, Jesse, because he has this really nice chair.
Christ with the chair.
I mean, the chair is unbelievably comfortable. I'm on one where I may fold backwards because there's no support at all, and I'm 60. He does everything except give me the good chair to sit in for 2 hours.
You see how the goalposts continually move. It's why I realize I'm never going to win here. He's become such a pampered diva now in his old age that he can't possibly just go out here and make do with one chair. It's become
I'm doing it.
Really insufferable.
Listen, I'm suffering right here, but I'm
believe me, you're letting everyone know right now. Yeah. Everybody know here. So my father, his martyrdom continues here. We will see if we can get him down off the cross long enough to give you some takes this morning. And Dad, with that in mind, you called a football game last night. Going into it, I think the only national interest point for Bears-Chargers was a notion that I saw Bomani Jones throw out there, the great host of the Right Time podcast, was if the Bears somehow managed to win that game with Tyson Bagent filling in at quarterback for Justin Fields, the backup rookie undrafted free agent out of D2 Shepherd College in West Virginia that everybody has now learned, arm wrestling daddy. If they had found a way to go win, this likely felt like the last dance for Brandon Staley. We never had to worry about that because the Chargers just went out there and plucked the wings off them by and large. Unfortunately for Bagent, turnover night, that Chargers defense bowed up for their head coach. And so what you saw from that, is there any reason, did Brandon Staley do enough in this performance to stave off the Reaper for a little bit while longer?
I do think he did. Now, they had lost 2 out of the last 3 coming in, and the Bears had won a couple. So it was like 2 teams with 2 wins each going what felt like maybe in different directions, right? Yeah. Chicago had won 2 in a row. They had this backup quarterback in that people are getting to know and love. You're not sure when Justin Fields is going to come back. He's been medically cleared, but how well can he grip a ball? So they're waiting on that. And it was like, you play long enough, you get in the positions of the Chargers where you're right on the precipice of the season going by the wayside. Yeah. Like if they'd have lost that game. Now, again, as we'll talk about, Kansas City also lost, which made it somewhat interesting. But
which, man, got some loud ovations inside. Yeah, as I still wonder who, this is the first time I could clearly tell Chargers home game. Bears fans were just not out there in that same way, so the Chargers actually had the home crowd on their side.
Yeah, they absolutely did. But all of a sudden, it was a situation where if the Chargers had lost this, my thought was then players start to, because it's a team game, you're looking for the team goals, but a lot of team goals would be out the window, even though we're right around the halfway point now of odd games. You can't really pick the halfway point, but you're kind of out of it now, and you kind of go to self-preservation mode a little bit. And then are there going to be changes? That's in your mind. Or am I impressing this staff? Is there going to be a different staff? All that was being kind of bannered about. But the offense finally looked like the Chargers offense we were looking for. One of the big parts, not only Herbert, was Austin Eckler. His last 2-game stretch, he had 108 total yards, which were the lowest 2-game span he had in his career. Last night he had 23 touches. He had well over that in yardage alone just in this week. So Keenan Allen's really the guy they've been throwing to now. Mike Williams been out. Josh Palmer got hurt a little bit, but he did come back in. But Herbert was sharp, not a ton downfield, a lot of timing routes that were hitting well, or Eckler out of the backfield. So all of a sudden, with the Chiefs losing, now they are 3-5, and the Chiefs only have 2 losses. But man, you never know. Yeah, I mean, you just never know if you start making that run, if it clicks a little bit. And what happened with Chicago is their defense really let them down. In all honesty, when you have a guy in this case, in Tyson Bagent, who not a lot is expected of, and they want to protect him. The defense had been playing great in the last 2 wins, been doing a really, really nice job. And they come out of the gate and give up 24 points in the first half. Yeah. That's just kind of asking a lot. And the offense, in my eyes, it just seems a little stale. And I know a lot of people say, well, it's a new quarterback. But get him moving some. I mean, every single pass was just standing in the pocket. Maybe one or so.
Which has been the criticism of that offense, even with Justin Fields under center, which is why aren't you doing things to maximize the skill set of the quarterback under center, one of which, and one of the major selling points, would be athleticism, moving on the fly.
Exactly right. And it's just not there. And with Bagent, I think on some of he made some great third down throws. The kid made some really nice passes.
I'll say this: he never looked overwhelmed.
No,
he was never drowning in the moment out there.
Right.
And listen, you talk about he was the D2 Heisman Trophy winner. Right. He's one of the all-time leaders in certain passing categories.
He's all-time leader in touchdowns with 159.
And so I think what we've seen, we talked about this with Brock Purdy, which we'll get to with the 49ers conversation, is when you've got guys that come in having played a lot of college football and who aren't more raw prospects, you do see some of the benefits of that in certain moments where they're used to processing through a lot of these things. They're used to going out there and throwing an interception and having to come back out to respond. Mentally, the task isn't as daunting, even though you've taken this massive step up in talent.
So he made some really converted a couple of third downs where there was some good coverage and really kind of put it on the money. But I think as they needed drives later in the game, there was a little too much of when they needed a pass or something for a first down, that it was one person. It was basically take the snap and go one way.
Yeah.
And if the Chargers had it covered, they were screwed. And a lot of times that's what was happening at the end of the game. Instead of getting him on the move, giving him some options to see if he'll take off, and I don't mean a lot, half rolls, boots, whatever, or so that, but that has been an issue. I think personally for that offense. So it just seems somewhat stagnant in the way they go, but I like the kid. I really do. I mean, and your point is well taken. And that is one thing you notice is the moment is not too big for him. He has a lot of poise back there. He doesn't get great protection at times. But this time it was complimentary football the last 2 weeks, of which he came in for one game and then started obviously last week. The defense helping, and the defense did not play well last night. Too much of a lead and too much having to get out of the game plan because Deontay Foreman last week had a lot of carries, had 3 touchdowns. They were running the ball and couldn't get any of that going.
So I think coming off that game last night, the Chargers and Brandon Staley get to sleep a little bit more soundly for this week now. It's obviously going to be a lot of questions that continue to persist there, but we saw a little bit of flash of the potential that could be there. For the Bears, Tyson Bagent, I think people automatically now, when a player comes from his kind of background, want to see it become a Brock Purdy story. They want to believe everybody can do that. And I think the far more likely outcome is this is a guy that's securing his place in the league in some form for a while now with this stretch here. Because for the Bears, I talked to a number of people in the stadium that were Bears fans last night. I was over at the game with you. And the sentiment is still, we need to get a look at Justin Fields because we need to figure out what's going to happen going forward. Are we either going to stick with him, or is Tyson Bagent a reminder that, hey, you can get production from somebody else in that spot, and if we're within range in the draft, especially with that Panthers pick, we need to go and get while the getting's good with one of these young quarterbacks. I think that's going to be the thing that continues to hang out over them, and I think ultimately it's why when Justin Fields is ready, there's not going to be a lot of hemming and hawing about this. You as an organization have a directive, and I don't think the gap between quarterbacks is enough to make you really sweat that out. So we'll see what happens with them going into the future here, but I think we came off this weekend with one really big question surrounding a couple of teams in the NFL. And a lot of it was prompted by one result here. We had the Bengals come out and pull it off against the 49ers team. Right. You mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs got that loss yesterday in the division against Denver. Patrick Mahomes' first road loss in the AFC West.
That's stunning.
In his career.
Just absolutely stunning.
And so, Jesse, I want to start with this Bengals and 49ers result before I get to the question that we have to pose here.
Yeah, so like you said, Bengals rolling over the 49ers here, handing them their 3rd straight loss. And all eyes are on Brock Purdy. That's the narrative right now moving forward here. So guys, 20 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in his previous 10 career starts. Now the last 2 games, 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He had a really bad game, probably the worst of his young career. He didn't look good. He slammed his head on the turf at one point, wasn't pulled by the individual concussion spotter. So what do we think about this 49ers team? 3 losses in a row. Brock Purdy struggling. It feels pretty obvious to say that they're in trouble here.
And a lot of times we're going to look at the quarterback because of how well Brock Purdy did, but their defense is not playing very well either.
No.
They're not getting the pressure that they normally get. It's been a little softer on the coverage side of it. So that's, as we talk about complementary football, because we've always said they have the best roster in the NFL, offense to defense, certainly depth on defense. And the defense isn't helping a whole lot now, but as we all know, it's going to point right to Brock Purdy. Why were you so good, and why are you basically average now? He did throw for 365 in this game, but 2 more touchdowns, lost another fumble, and that is just going to kill you.
And you had to see him make a lot more use of his legs. And I think this is a tough one because you've got to account for opponent in this, because right now the Bengals might be back.
Yeah.
Like the Bengals might be all the way back here. What you saw from them in terms of Lou Anarumo, who's going to have one of those days where I feel like you're going to hear the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator's name mentioned on a lot of talk shows. One, because they don't have one star player on that defense that we can point to and give the credit to, and so we do the next best thing where we default to the coach, who does put together great game plans. And Trey Hendrickson and those guys up front set a physical tone. They force Brock Purdy, especially on third downs, to make use of his legs a lot more often by mixing up things in coverage. All of that is true. Joe Burrow looks fully healthy.
Yes, he does.
You mentioned the pressure portion of things. Nick Bosa generated 9 pressures in the first half, the most by a pass rusher in a first half in a game this season. He finished with 12, but wasn't able to get home as much. Right. One of the plays where you knew Joe Burrow was back, it was like the first or second third down for the Bengals in the first half of this game, and he looked dead to rights in the pocket. He somehow worked his way out of that one, rolled out, and hit, I think, T. Higgins or Jamar Chase for a first down right by the sticks. And that was the Joe Burrow that we were used to seeing produce for them. And so, Dad, it's all what brings me to this question, because you can accuse that away and say, all right, this is the Bengals team we were expecting. This is the Bengals team that looks like one of the best teams in the AFC. My question to you is, we mentioned this result, we mentioned the Chiefs result. Who needs to be more worried right now about going forward? Because this time last week, I'm sitting up here saying the Chiefs are the best team in football right now. The 49ers hadn't been far behind them in all of these conversations. They looked like two of the teams that were on a collision course yet again, and now we sit here with both of them coming off a loss here right now. Long term this season, who are you more concerned about right now?
I'm more concerned. I would be more concerned about San Francisco, just pointing squarely at the quarterback position. We've seen Patrick Mahomes do what he needs to do, and we've seen really good out of Brock Purdy last year leading into this year, but now we're not seeing so much good. Now we're seeing more turnovers. I trust if you're going to pull out of this thing, Patrick Mahomes more than forget Patrick Mahomes over Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes over any quarterback in the league that he can still push you through. One of the things you have to look at, too, is division. So the biggest threat, you would say, in the division for Cincinnati is Baltimore, right? And for San Francisco, dare we say, there's going to be the competition with Seattle now?
I mean, Seattle's leading the division right now.
Exactly
Your
right.
first place Seattle Seahawks, by the way.
Yeah, so they both have, but in the North, where Cincinnati is, every team has a winning record. Even though Cleveland lost, they're 4-3. They have a winning record. Pittsburgh has a winning record. So that's also you have to put into play is the division play as well. But yeah, that's where I would worry more about from those two we're talking about, Kansas City and San Francisco, is I would have more faith in Patrick Mahomes.
I'd agree that'd be the right way, but I would also say it's because you mentioned with Patrick Mahomes, it makes the rest of what happens on the roster a little bit less damning when things go wrong right now. Now, I saw some people bantering about, you do wonder if around the trade deadline, because of what we've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs, shout out to Jeff Schwartz on this one, going after a number 2 receiver right now. We're still waiting. Rashee Rice has flashes, but it's been Travis Kelce and the Pips so far.
Right.
And it does not seem like that's going to be good enough when push comes to shove. Mahomes was dealing with the flu yesterday. That might have been worse than we anticipated in a cold Denver too. Being sick and then having to play in the cold really lessens the likelihood of the Jordan flu game kind of game.
Oh, yeah.
I thought at the beginning I saw him go for a scramble, and I'm in my chair yelling flu game like an idiot. But going out there and trying to do that in that environment, give the Denver defense credit. They've been the punching bag for everyone all season long, and because largely of their own poor play, looked like a totally different unit. They ran the ball really well on the other side, and so all of those things popped up, but Patrick Mahomes softens the blow for the rest of that roster a lot. To your point with Brock Purdy, I think it's less that he's played super poorly during this stretch and more that you've seen. Man, Trent Williams, incredibly important. Deebo Samuel, incredibly important. And defensively, while we tout the depth, offensively, I don't think there's nearly as much there, especially when, hey, if you've got a defensive line on the other side that's worth its salt, like Cincinnati's was yesterday, and like we've seen for the 49ers in matchups with other teams, and you think long-term, Philadelphia Eagles, some of the other teams in the NFC, that buys up a lot of energy from George Kittle, who they used to help take the heat off some of those pass rushers, used to try and chip and help and do things to keep Brock Purdy upright. And so all of a sudden you're looking around and you're whittling away at some of those weapons that normally would have been huge assets for you when this house of cards falls a little bit faster than we expected.
And a lot of times when that happens, when you're losing weapons, you even put more pressure on the quarterback to pull you out of it.
Yes.
And we've seen, talking about the three teams, including Cincinnati, we've seen Joe Burrow do it. We've seen Patrick Mahomes do it. We saw Brock Purdy, again, play extremely well and now struggling without some of the weapons. So that, to me, is the biggest question of those three quarterbacks, trusting him to come back.
At GoJo and Golic, let us know who should be more concerned between the Chiefs and the 49ers. But coming up next, big time concern in Minnesota with one of the most important injuries in the NFL this weekend. Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield. It's time for Mic'd Up Monday, presented by Wrangler. Some sounds from around NFL Sunday. And fellas, Kirk Cousins' season is almost certainly over, okay? He exited the game on Sunday in the fourth quarter with an injury that looked a lot like a torn Achilles tendon. And then afterwards, head coach Kevin O'Connell confirmed, that the team fears that it is an Achilles injury.
We are fearing. Currently, he's being evaluated and will be into tomorrow. We are fearing an Achilles injury. The severity of that, I do not know at this point, but I know that's what our fear is in the moment, and we'll confirm that as soon as possible. Thinking of Kirk, our locker room, every single player in our locker room. Thinking about our leader, our guy right now, and I'm just so proud of him. Proud of the way he's played all season long.
I mean, guys, Vikings win, lose Cousins. The locker room was incredibly somber after this because obviously it's a huge talent loss, but it's also an emotional loss of their leader.
And a loss at a time where the Vikings started to feel some semblance of hope again for this season. Right. Remember the skid they had started on, so much of it tied to just really bad fumble luck and some things there. But you had an offense that had been cooking and now had finally been matched by the defensive effort. You did a great win in the division over the Green Bay Packers. But, Dad, you know this feeling all too well when you see this happen to this caliber of player who entering week 8 led the NFL in touchdown passes, was second in passing yards, and even in this game had 274 yards and 2 more touchdowns until he went out with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You know, as a player and the rest of that team, Jaron Hall, your backup quarterback's a young player out of BYU. That's not going to be the kind of thing, even when you get Justin Jefferson back eventually, that has you in the contention that you thought you might have been this year.
Without question, they're a team that feels like they were on the right path. They've now won 3 in a row. Now we'll see what Detroit does tonight in their Monday night game. Could they fall another, loss closer to Minnesota? But you're right. As you mentioned, in 91, when we saw Randall Cunningham get his knee blown out a year, we thought we were really going to do something. The air just deflates out of you. You mentioned where he is. He's second in quarterback rating behind Tua as well, tied for touchdowns, I believe, with 18 with Tua. So but we've seen big numbers out of him, and we've seen this team do well in the regular season, but they're not going to do it without him. So as much criticism as he and that team gets about, they're always, maybe now last year was an exception, a little more than 500. They can make the playoffs, but then they lose in the first or second round. They can never get over the hump.
The criticism was you brought him there to get you over the ceiling that you perceived, and they haven't done it.
But talk about him being gone this year. His deal is up and not being back. And now all of a sudden you were making this little bit of a run, and you're like, wait a minute, did all those plans go on hold? But now I don't think so, because it's an Achilles. So you're talking at least, we'll see the miraculous Aaron Rodgers and what
I can say. I mean, he was out there putting weight on that thing, throwing pregame in a way that wowed a lot of people.
But I also don't think that they were planning on bringing him back next year in Kirk Cousins. So,
well, that's the complicating part here. Is we had spent the first half of the season trying to trade Kirk Cousins by the deadline, and as that comes up tomorrow, that's obviously wasn't going to happen based on the way that he was playing. It probably wasn't realistic to begin with. But now going in an offseason where he is not going to be contracted after this year, what does his future look like? That looked like a guy that was in line to maybe get himself another big-time payday.
Somewhere else,
either somewhere else or there. Now you wonder, are the Vikings able to bring him back on a more manageable deal here? Are they going to be in range if this season goes out of control? Or now all of a sudden you in the range to go and maybe pick a quarterback in this draft near the top of the draft and try and secure your future post-Kirk Cousins for the first time now and broach that subject?
It seems like the way they're going to have to go, because would he even be ready for next season? At this point. So it seems like they have to prepare for the next.
Yeah, I think it's an invitation for the Vikings to turn the page. It's just unfortunate in the way it happens, because Kirk Cousins has been nothing but a consummate pro. He's been nothing but a great ambassador for the sport on and off the field. And so you do hope personally for the guy, however it works out, that this isn't the last you've seen of him as starting quarterback, because he's been playing really compelling football over the last really year and change now, going from last year into this season. So wish him well, but obviously that looks like bad news for the Minnesota Vikings. Jesse, what do we got up next here?
Yeah, we had 2 guys getting their first career NFL win. So let's start with Bryce Young, completed 22 of 31 passes for 235 yards and a touchdown in Sunday's 15-13 win over the Texans. And guys, he felt pretty good about it.
It's definitely an exciting feeling. As we know, wins aren't easy to come by in this league, and it's great to get on the board, great to get one in. Right now, obviously, we're fresh, everyone's enjoying it, and we're super happy about it. But it's a lot of excitement. But at the same time, right now is the time for us to enjoy it and have fun. But tomorrow we come back and watch the film, and there's a lot of stuff that we still can get better at, still can improve at, and we don't want to be the team that got a win on week 8. This is, we have to keep building off of this. And that's a long journey, that's a long road, and that's going to come with the work that comes throughout the week, and we continue to build off of. So right now, a lot of excitement, but, we're going to have to turn the page on this, and just like any other week, make sure we keep getting better.
Guys, matched up with Stroud, how badly did Bryce Young need to get this win to prove he was the right pick here?
I was going to say, man, there were a lot of narrative things that I don't think were an accurate reflection of the quarterback. But, Dad, you even kind of hinted at it last week, this idea that you and a lot of other people had CJ Stroud as the quarterback. You would have taken number 1 overall. The Good Vibes Texans had been such a great story during the first quarter to half of the season. Bryce Young, that looked like a young man who was incredibly relieved right now. If faith is belief without sight, they had to have a lot of faith in Bryce Young early on in this season without a lot of weapons around him. You still in this game are largely relying on 33-year-old Adam Thielen to bail you out of these situations. That was huge for them.
And Eddie Pinheiro kicks the game winner with time hitting zeros.
Oh,
and they were celebrating like it was a Super Bowl. And you know what? Good for him. It was their first
and remember,
win.
Eddie Pinheiro had to kick it. There were back-to-back penalties on the Texans.
Yeah.
And so they had to re-kick it after they had made the game-winning field goal because it was unabated to the quarterback. And you and I are both sitting here like, what if he misses this kick?
Could you imagine? It would have been Panthers, right? Not getting a win and getting in. But the best thing about it at the end of the game there, the kick and that sequence was amazing. But they drove the ball 15 plays, 86 yards, 6 minutes and 17 seconds off the clock on that final drive. So kudos to that offense, putting that drive together to get him in position for a game-winning field goal.
Same Bryce Young that we've seen, by the way. Yeah. Poised, composed,
cool, collected,
and managed to make that happen now. And again, we talked about their schedule. You look out, Colts coming up, Bears, Cowboys are going to be a tough out, but then Titans, Buccaneers, Saints, you get back into that NFC South schedule, a little bit less daunting than the road they went through at the beginning portion of this season. I'm not saying they're going to start to light the league on fire, but I think you're going to have more bankable moments for Bryce Young, the quarterback, to try and get early on in his career. But Jesse, we got to get to the real rookie story of the weekend here, a coming out party for the ages in Tennessee.
Geez, we didn't really know what to expect from Will Levis, right? So Ryan Tannehill's injured. He gets his first career start. He goes out and dazzles 4 touchdowns. This was my favorite story of the weekend. His family absolutely going insane in the stands. It was really something to see. And then he goes out in the post-game presser and defends a teammate.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that did their jobs today that won us that game. I mean, 7 being one of them, Malik. Really, that left a sour taste in all of our mouths when we were hearing those boos when he was coming on the field. And we got to know that he's going to be a big part of us going forward to win games. So let's just come correct next time as fans and treat him correctly.
Let's just come correct. I mean, come on, that's a teammate.
Yeah, that was pretty cool and not surprising with him. He's a player that has that kind of edge to him. And Mike Vrabel had said it was going to be more of a platoon style with Malik Willis, who went in there, fumbled on the first play of the game. So a bit of an inauspicious start. But, I mean, what can you say about Will in this performance? DeAndre Hopkins had to be looking up and praying to whatever deity, thanking whatever deity he worships, because this was manna from heaven for him and for DeAndre Hopkins fantasy owners.
And I was just going to say, anybody that had it in their team yesterday, incredible. So, Now the question is, listen, they in Houston, after Houston's lost, they're 2 games out from Jacksonville, who got a win yesterday. Is it Will Levis time? You just putting him in there? Tannehill coming back from the ankle injury. You know, like we've talked about in a couple of these divisions, you're hanging right there. So these next probably 4 to 5 games is really going to kind of clear the picture of what's going on. Do you go with the rookie and see what you have there, or do you put the veteran back in there to say we still kind of have a shot at this?
I think we always talk about it's about earning more reps. I think Will Levis earned the right to be the guy they trot out next week and to see what happens. And I don't think at this point you've got to put anything in pen if you're Tennessee, but you drafted him for a reason you did. And I think you want to start to get a look and see, can we get more of this consistently? Spoiler alert, he's going to come back down to earth. But in the meantime, relish this, Titans fans. By the way, we will get to an important stat about the uniforms Tennessee was wearing in just a little bit. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. We've got some college football to get to here, Dad. Two unstoppable forces in the sport that I have a stat for you for in just a moment here. It's going to combine college and pro in a way that I think can help us both out here. But we had a lot happen in college football this weekend. In the college football playoff sphere, which, by the way, we get the first round of the CFP committee's rankings that come out tomorrow, October 31st, that very first rattle out of the box. So new year, new committee members, we get to find out what they value, what they think. We'll hammer home tomorrow all the criteria that you need to know. I've gone through the mock selection process with the committee, so very familiar with this process, especially now as we've been doing the CFP thing for a while. And we get the first look at certain teams like Georgia and Michigan who haven't really played anybody at this point by and large, how the committee's going to look at their schedules and judge that. Oklahoma getting upset by Kansas in Lawrence this weekend, certainly going to go a long way. They'd had the win over Texas, so the Big 12 a little bit more wide open now.
Congrats to Kansas and Kansas State, both jumping in the polls this week.
Yeah, both big time, man. Yeah, the Sunflower State, is it the Sunflower State?
You're looking at me and asking that question.
I thought that's what it was with Kansas. Jesse's already off.
I'm Googling. Hold on.
She's on it.
Yeah, but either way, both those, and Lance Leipold, friend of the program here, a great coach for Kansas, the job that he's done there. And again, still with their backup quarterback, Jason Bean here. Dalen Daniels hasn't been available for them a lot this year, dealing with injury. And so that's going to have a major impact on things. But Dad, I don't know if there was a more startling result this weekend than the sight of College Game Day. Utah getting the wings plucked off them by Oregon in a big-time matchup. Utah had been rolling in, riding high. I saw Kyle Whittingham riding a Harley up to McAfee's set with the cutoff sleeves on. After beating USC, going out there still, Bryson Barnes, their backup quarterback, all the bad news about the players that wouldn't be available for them, and it did not matter. Bo Nix and this Oregon Death Star are, to me, the most interesting team to see where they land in the first round of the CFP rankings, because based on what they've done since playing Washington, a game they lost out in Seattle, playing at Washington's home field, they have been the better team. And I'd imagine at this rate, we expect a Pac-12 championship rematch between these two teams, even though there's still plenty of schedule left. Utah and Oregon State, I think, still going to factor into this race in who they might affect from those top two teams. If Oregon and Washington lined up to play again right now, Oregon would rightly be favored in this game, and looks like they could absolutely, if they went out in the Pac-12 championship, got a win that erased that loss, that looks like a college football playoff.
I say either one of these teams, and we see it every year, the Pac-12, they just beat each other up and end up knocking each other out. Well, if we can keep this one going, Washington and Oregon, to the Pac-12 championship game on one undefeated and 1-1 loss, I think the winner's going to be in. I do think the winner is going to be in. Because remember, you're going to get one knocked out in Michigan and Ohio State as well.
Yep.
Then there's Florida State sitting there looking at pretty good control.
Potentially, like Michigan and Ohio State is a fascinating part of this conversation, because Ohio State, you could argue, has two great wins so far this season in beating ranked Penn State and ranked Notre Dame on the road in those outings. And so if they lost a close one to Michigan, all of a sudden is it a situation like we had a couple of years ago where Ohio State, who last year looked like the best team in football and played Georgia like it in the CFP, can sneak in there? I don't know the answer, because we've got more depth around the sport. You look at the AP poll right now, Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2 still, Ohio State at 3, Florida State at 4, and then Washington and Oregon, that tandem at 5 and 6. That's the AP poll, so that doesn't count for anything. The committee is supposed to be starting fresh with how they look at this, and then you're followed by Texas. Oh, by the way, Alabama hanging out there at 8.
They're just kind of hanging out.
Alabama. You hear that Jason music in the background, right? The piano.
Now, big test this week against LSU. Yeah, but I'm with you. They're just kind of hanging there. All of a sudden, championship weekend rolls around. They're like, oh, there's Alabama.
Like, again, what we've talked about this season, I want everyone to mentally prepare. And I'm not saying I think it's likely, because they play with a very small margin for error now based on their style. The offense is big play dependent. The defense is certainly built to party. It's a little more reminiscent of Nick's old teams. But all I'm saying is, you look up, Alabama's got LSU this weekend. So if they win, another marquee win. They had a win already against a ranked Tennessee team. This would be a ranked LSU team. They finish up with Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn. And so doesn't look like going to be a ranked team in that bunch, especially after Kentucky loses again this weekend. But all of a sudden you do that, and then you take them to the SEC championship game. And you've got what's likely going to be number 1 Georgia in that game, provided they get by Missouri this week, which is going to be the battle for the SEC East crown.
Game you have, that's a big good one.
But if Alabama, with that resume, beats Georgia in that game, Tell me how you're keeping them out. Tell me how you're keeping the Tide out. Like, that's still a very live dog that we sort of set off to the side after the Texas game and the subsequent performances that didn't look like. But I'm saying they don't get talked about.
No, they don't
right now.
Boy, is Saban happy about that.
I was just saying, this man everything he's ever wanted. All those smiles that we overreacted to in the preseason are all of a sudden looking a little bit more predictive again. That's all I'm saying.
No rat poison out there at all. And I'll say right now, and it doesn't matter because Ohio State, Michigan are play. I think both Washington and Oregon are better than Ohio State. And I'm not saying that because Ohio State beat my school in Notre Dame. And I don't care about that.
No.
Stuff. I'm just looking at the teams. I think both those teams are better than Ohio State right now. The one that's still to me is how good is Florida State? They've looked bad at times, just eking out some wins, and then they've looked really dominant at times. I'm not sure what they are. And in the ACC, going through the rest of the ACC, they should win that conference easily. Quite honestly.
I was going to say they've got Pitt coming up, which, man, I almost feel bad for Pitt there here. I mean, what happened at Notre Dame yesterday with that team?
Yeah.
I've been used to my entire lifetime, even when Pitt has teams that aren't world beaters, aren't top 25 teams, always a tough game, and usually always something weird happens. Our friends over at the Shutdown Fullcast and Split Zone do always call it the Pitt super weapon. It just charges up for a while and then does the weirdest thing humanly possible. That team having the wheels fully come off, where Christian Bayer, the backup quarterback that had gone in and replaced Phil Jurkovec a few games ago, went out there and looked listless behind an offense that doesn't have any playmakers. The defense, probably the most surprising part. Usually they've got somebody of note in the front seven that's raining hell somewhere, and it was just nowhere to be found in this game. As so much so after the fact that you had the Pat Narduzzi, the head coach, who I understand the full context of the comment said, I've got to do a better job coaching, but also said we had a lot of great players that we lost off last year's team, and we didn't do it. We have that sound here. Can we play that sound of Nard Dog?
I'll go back. I mean, you, as a football coach, you lose a lot of good players a year ago. You think as a coach you're gonna replace them. We obviously haven't, and again, starts with me. I didn't do a good enough job coaching today, and put it on me. And we got to make plays. So, just comes down to, making plays and doing a better job coaching.
So he caught himself a little bit there at the end and managed to slip it in, but not enough. Like those comments, and they get tweeted without the context of that last line. But even so, a couple of his players responding there, which lets you know that not all is well in paradise right now, and that's a tough place to be, Dad. Deion Sanders did something similar after the UCLA game where he referenced, hey, we're going to have to go out in the portal and get some offensive linemen. Even if it's true, and we all know it's true, you still got a month left of the season with these players.
You got to rely on these players.
And you're hoping longer, because with Deion, he's going to be able to portal guys in.
Right.
Because I'm sure if you're an offensive or defensive lineman,
you're seeing what's going on and saying, okay, that's a place for me.
And you're seeing if, hey, when they have success, look how good life can be for me. I think Colorado's got an easy sell from that point. Pat Narduzzi, what's the sell going to be for an offensive player to come there right now?
None.
You've had struggles there. You brought in Kurt Cignetti, the offensive coordinator from Boston College, where it wasn't a great offense necessarily, and now they've struggled here. And then you see comments like that, and you see post-2021 when Kenny Pickett was there, what the offense looks like now. What impetus would a young player have in coming there in order to play offense when that's what you feel like you're walking into?
See, again, both coaches said what they said was absolutely true.
100%.
But it's just stuff would you say nowadays don't really say? Because I know it sure was hell said when I was coming up. But that coaches
would coaches say that in the press conferences when you were like saying, because I always thought the idea was, hey, we're going to present a united front publicly, and then we'll criticize behind. Yeah. I do think it's more damning now, and I think it's interesting to see how coaches are going to play this, because you are in a portal era where players do have recourse, where players do have an ability to affect their future more immediately.
Players have more movement now than certainly you did or even I did before that. So yeah, you're supposed to have that united front for sure, and then behind closed doors, you rattle the sabers, and both these coaches did not. So yeah, you definitely had some players look at them like, wait a minute here.
You can understand frustration coming out given the course of both their seasons, but that's usually where it stops. The buck usually stops with those coaches. Coming up next, the most important stat of the weekend and our all weekend team. Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's Monday, so it's time for the guys to take a look back at their weekend and choose their all-weekend team. So honorable mention, second team, first team. Fellas, who's getting the nod?
I just realized we probably should have done like prizes or something nice that we could send to our all weekend team members. Let them feel the love
What
here.
prizes you thinking of sending?
I don't know. We don't really have any prizes to send. I guess I could just send them stuff from around my apartment. I kind of want to get rid of stuff anyway.
Kind of what we did during Mike and Mike. We would send stuff from Bob Picozzi's desk, who did our Did You Nosy.
So you would just steal from Bob's desk.
So we would go to his desk and take like a stapler and send it to a listener or viewer. Yeah.
How about a never-ending toilet paper roll?
We have plenty of those.
I mean, listen, I got it right here. I went and got it so I can show you guys.
Oh my God!
Look at that.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a big one.
That's why they call it a forever roll.
Okay, how far into that roll are we?
We're about. We haven't cracked it too much. And Jesse, to your point, when I know I'm going to have guests, I am a little self-conscious, especially if they're women. And so I usually, I hope by that time that I've whittled it down to about here in the ring, so it actually looks like just a normal toilet paper
If not,
roll.
do you pull it off and you put a regular?
Yeah, do you have
Sometimes
a backup?
I'll have one there as like a backup, a substitute roll that I get in there for that reason. So yes, this is a peek behind the curtain.
So Jesse, really quick, for a woman coming here, more bad than good that he has that, or should he get rid of it and put the smaller roll?
I think it's kind of funny, like it's a conversation starter, and then the story behind it is kind of cute. Like, oh, my mom got it for us.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like endearing, I would say.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So then the next morning when she needs to use it, it's ready and waiting for her.
Oh, bow, chicka, wow, wow.
All right, Mr. Player.
We're having sex, folks. We're having sex.
Congrats on the sex.
She gets a breakfast bar.
Yeah.
There we go.
Great. Nice job on it.
bar
You're
and
gonna
a
breakfast
toilet
bar
paper.
and make some coffee.
Oh,
some
God.
powdery creamer and no milk.
I'm probably not on anybody's all-weekend team. Let's see who is. We go out for breakfast. Leave it alone. The all-weekend team. Let's start with honorable mention.
Okay.
Speaking of service with a smile, I got to give a shout-out. I mentioned last week, I called the UCLA-Colorado game this weekend.
Right.
First trip up to the Rose Bowl there. This one, honorable mention all-weekend team, the Rose Bowl staff. The nicest, most accommodating group of people I have ever seen around a stadium. Everybody dressed to the nines. Everybody, hello, welcome to the Rose Bowl, pointing you in the right direction. I have never met a more competent or well-endearing staff in my travels around the country. They were phenomenal. A beautiful setting. The grass, I was tempted to go and take a little bite out of, Les Miles style. It was that pretty, that well kept. We had a beautiful afternoon there for some very weird Pac-12 football. Never seen a game where a team was leading at halftime despite being down 4 in the turnover margin.
One at halftime? Was it 7-6?
7-6 at halftime in favor of UCLA, who was -4 in the turnover department. But a lovely day. I could see why everybody loves it so much. Fun seeing Kirk Herbstreit walk into the booth. That is the Kirk Herbstreit family broadcast booth inside the stadium. It's Kirk's booth, quite literally.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty cool one. So shout out to them. Who's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention, you know how in baseball, they show at the end of the game, the starting pitcher, who's been in a while, they have them wrapped in ice?
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine Thomas Moorhead and Jamie Gillian, the punters for the Jets and the Giants respectively, walked out of the locker room with their legs on ice.
Teemo.
Morstead punted 11 times. Gillian punted 13 times. And so 24 combined punts. They punted for collectively over 1,000 yards. they punted for 1,078 yards.
The state of Iowa is so deeply aroused right now.
Unbelievable. There were 15, I think, in the first half. 24 punts in what was the Drek game of the weekend that was so bad we said we needed more and went to overtime.
I was going to say, I don't know what we all did karmically wrong as a nation to earn overtime in that game. I saw the internet has been doing these bleep it so-and-so highlights where they'll put music behind somebody who usually you wouldn't think's deserving of a highlight. Shout out to our boy Dan Orlovsky. Got a great one done of him who actually had some really awesome plays in that. Shouldn't be surprised, but here I am. And then someone did a bleep at Thomas Morstead highlights, the punter in celebration for the Jets, the former Saints longtime punter. Incredible force.
Unbelievable. But 24 punts. So congrats to you guys. Rest those legs.
Chris Hassel, my broadcast partner in college football Saturday night and an Iowa apologist, has to be just pulsating right now hearing those punting numbers. My second team all weekend pick is Dave Doran, NC State head football coach.
Boy,
for getting real spicy on the CW. So we've had this phenomenon this season. The ACC has had a handful of games played on the CW, and there's one commonality. So I'm going to give you guys A stat in sports coming off this weekend. There are only 2 sure forces in sports. Well, actually 3. One of them is Air Force. Shout out to the troops getting it done still. That team has been sensational this season. In the NFL, Dad, teams wearing throwback uniforms 4-0 in the last 2 weeks. The Eagles and Kelly Green beat the Dolphins. The Titans wearing the Oilers throwbacks beat Atlanta. Miami wore their throwbacks and beat the Patriots. And then Seattle Seahawks came back and beat Cleveland wearing some clean throwbacks. But the other sure force in this world is that ACC favorites playing on the CW are destined to fall. North Carolina was a 24-point favorite and lost to Virginia on the CW. Louisville was a 7-point favorite and lost to Pitt on the CW. Pitt was a 6.5-point favorite and lost to Cincinnati. Wake Forest, a 3.5-point favorite who lost to Georgia Tech. And this weekend, Clemson, a 9.5-point favorite against NC State, lost on the CW. Dabo Swinney said we need to lose some more games to get the bandwagoners off. We didn't know that was a real threat, and he was going to do it. But Dave Doran, after the fact, Spicy Dave, interviewed by my guy Trevor Scales, said to Steve Smith Sr., who was the guest picker for College Game Day, the proud Utah alum, said, tell Steve Smith Sr. to kiss my ass, saying that we are a basketball school. Spicy Dave Doran is my favorite Dave Doran.
Is this the year where coaches are firing back at analysts? We've seen it on the college level, going after Lou Holtz's of the world, and the pro level as well.
Well, I'll give him credit. At least Steve Smith Sr. is south of 80. He's at least punching at somebody in his weight class, and Dave Doran, one of the guys I actually believe wants to smoke.
So the line to never believe, and we always tell you not to believe it, is when a coach is asked about something that's said in the media, they said, oh, I don't read or listen to that stuff. They all do.
All of them.
They all do, and they all keep their receipts. All right, my second team, we're going to go to the NBA. It's early in the season, but Joel Embiid, I mean, just so Philly beats Portland, beat them pretty good, I think 126-98. His stat line, 35 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 6 blocks.
In a game where we weren't even sure he was going to play because it was the second night of a back-to-back.
And good for him, 2 for 4 on a 3 from three-point land. Hit 50% of his three-point shots. So big game early on for the big man. I know they're back-to-back already, but my God, we're 3 games in. Are we resting people? I mean, what do we do?
I don't think he played in any of the games in the preseason, so
I think we're all right just now. Yeah,
probably don't need to go down that road just yet, but still, a dominant performance from the reigning MVP. All right, Dad, let's go to the first team on this one. Coming off this weekend, we talked already about Will Levis's performance with the Tennessee Titans and what that did for DeAndre Hopkins, their star receiver, who had been kind of toiling in anonymity for most of the season, gets his big day. It was a fantasy boom. The only player that would have gotten you more fantasy love than him was another guy who needed a big game. My first team all weekend contender is CeeDee Lamb. 12 catches, 158 yards in 2 touchdowns. And he'd been hearing it from the outside world about his status as a number 1 receiver, what he was or wasn't doing for that Cowboys offense. And he was everything yesterday, absolutely cooking this Rams secondary, was far and away the number 1 go-to target for Dak Prescott in a 43-20 win. And so I thought that was big for them on a lot of fronts, because in all seriousness, he does need to produce like this more consistently if this is going to be a team that rebounds from the stink of that 49ers loss and does something this season.
So my first team is going to go to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has been an absolute beast for the Eagles. They get the win over Washington. He has eight catches for 130 yards. And why that's important, he is the first player in NFL history, broke the tie with Calvin Johnson, to go now 6 straight games with over 125 receiving yards. One of them was close. He got 127 against the Rams in a win, but 6 straight games, over $125 in those 6 games, has 5 touchdowns as well, and looks like a beast in his uniform. I mean, the dude is big, the dude is physical, and the dude is, he's getting the ball, and he still gets it anyway. He's one of those.
It's been really impressive to watch. Last year was such a split deck between him and Devonta Smith, their other first-round pick out of Alabama, and this year it does seem like the scales have tipped a lot more in favor of A.J. Brown. Smith had 7 for 99 yards and a touchdown yesterday, so still plenty of work to go around. But you're right, the physicality of A.J. Brown was a huge difference maker when they brought him over. It was huge help for Jalen Hurts in the middle of the field.
And again, he wasn't a trade deadline trade, but he was a trade, and boy, another one that has really worked out.
Yeah, Howie, he just can't keep getting away with this .gif for the rest of the NFL. Coming up next, who got away with it in Week 8 in the NFL? We recap the rest of the weekend that was next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We are continuing our look back at Week 8. And guys, we have to talk about what was probably the most important score of the day. Cowboys blowout win over the Rams ends in a final score that has been never seen before in NFL history. Guys, we have a scoregami. That's right.
Let's go.
Let's go. 1079th in NFL history. It's a hot button topic. I hope we can all agree on this at some point. And I do want to say Cowboys have now been involved in 3 since the start of the 2021 season. So this is like their thing.
Wait, this is a hot button topic?
Yeah.
Dallas, I mean, it's hot button topic because people like you were hating on it.
You hate it. You hate it.
I hate it.
Whoa. I don't hate it.
Noted scoregami hater, Michael.
Hate is a strong word.
I don't know if it was strong enough.
I'm just basically, when I hear the scoregami thing, I'm basically like, okay, and ready to move on. But people just want to just, wow. It's kind of like when the NFL schedule comes out, and I'm like, okay. And everybody just hangs on it. I mean, scoregami?
The NFL schedule happens every year. Scoregami, this has never happened before. In the history of the NFL, this league that you've been a part of as a player, as a fan, as someone covering the league, you got to see something that hasn't happened. The Dallas Cowboys have been making something that hasn't happened happen since 2021, more than anybody else. They are America's scoregami team. That's who they've become.
Do people care? Do people really care about scoregami? I'd like to see this reflected in the social media world of today. Do people,
yes.
Do you know when somebody says, oh, we have a scoregami, what the hell we're even talking about? And B, then do you care?
All right, there we go. Put it on the poll. Do you know what scoregami is?
Yes. Do you know what it is? And do you care?
All right, well, that's actually a separate poll.
We'll find out.
Producer Brandon's going to have to work hard on that one.
Do you really care? So we just talked about it. Okay, then where do we go?
Well, we go to ask this question, because off the top of the show, we talked a lot about who, especially between two teams that we saw lose this weekend, the Chiefs and the 49ers, two of the teams. And by the way, I don't even know if I'm going to try and pick who the best team in the NFL is this week, because it seems like a curse. It seems like every time we utter it out loud, that team is just destined to get force-fed their teeth the next weekend, and that fan base is going to start looking at us sideways. And so I might abstain this week from picking the top team in the NFL.
Philadelphia. Say Philadelphia.
Who do the Eagles play this next week?
Cowboys.
Congratulations, Dallas. and Philadelphia. Come get your mans right here.
Oh,
I tried to stop them.
That's it. Me saying that is the demise of the Philadelphia Eagles. They will not succeed on one brotherly shove because I said they're the best team in football.
Oh, God.
Saw it happen this week.
You've just cursed yourself.
You did. And you already talked about how Philadelphia fans used to yell at you in the grocery store when you were a player.
Yeah.
Think about what they're going to do now. You're a feeble old man.
Well,
they're going to whoop you in public.
Man, feeble's a little strong, don't you think? I do have to get a new knee in February.
There you go. Yeah, they know that right now, too, because you said it out loud. So you're giving your weaknesses away.
Yep.
But we talked about those teams who limped out of this weekend, who should actually be the most concerned. We both think it's San Francisco between them and the Chiefs, just because now you've got injuries to important players that aren't going to go away as the season goes along. Ankle injury for Trent Williams that he's trying to come back from. Deebo Samuel, I believe, was a shoulder that he's trying to work back from. And so neither was available this weekend. We expect them both back at some point, but we've seen now the depth behind them is not anything to write home about offensively.
It's amazing. You still have Ayuk, who's been playing well. You have Kittle and you have CMC. I mean,
it's still a lot, but again, what we've seen through the context, I think, is less just, oh, Brock Purdy's bad, and more, all right, even with all that in mind, all those all-pros that you have here, when you take these two out specifically, and I think, again, against some of the matchups that are going to be the most important for them, going up against that Bengals D-line, missing a guy like Trent Williams, who you can put on one side and say, people always ask all the time, what can be the value of one offensive lineman? When you can put Trent Williams on one side and say, erase whoever they put over you, like whoever they put over you, probably going to just be not talked about in the box score, not going to factor into a lot of pressures. That's how good Trent Williams is. And so what that allows you to do, slide protection more the other way, worry about sending double teams to the guys that actually need it over on the other side. Maybe you got to do less move stuff there because, again, he can hold up in a way that his backup's never going to do. Like, even in the game he got hurt, Trent Williams said, yeah, I taped it up and went because I wasn't going to do that to my backup within the body of that game. So that's how important one guy can be up front for them. Deebo does so many things in that offense. We've just seen, like, that to me has been the takeaway is, even with all that, depth on offense has not been something that I can say has stood out for the 49ers.
And then that's something where somebody has to pick it up, and it normally falls on the quarterback. And Brock Purdy, in these 3 losses in a row, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, been sacked 6 times. He's lost multiple fumbles as well. So he's become somewhat human in these losses. and that's who the expectation is going to fall on. And everyone's going to say, is it fair? Because it was like, wow, look at Mr. Irrelevant, the 7th rounder. He's playing unbelievably well. Now is it going to be, well, he was a 7th rounder, so maybe we should expect the coming to earth a little bit.
But I think this is the fair part, and this is what we've always said, is when you look at the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, they're guys like we talked about with Mahomes, where even as the world is falling down around them, they're so physically gifted, and their skill set lends itself more to some of the off-script stuff and some of the stuff that exists outside of the structure. Brock Purdy is still a very good quarterback.
Yes, he is.
And I even think in the midst of some of the house burning down around him, he's done some really good things. Saw him take off and be more of a scrambler in that game against Cincinnati and affect that defense with his legs some in a way that's never going to be his specialty, but he's also not going to transcend the system, transcend the scheme enough to over and offset the loss of those guys.
And he's also in a tougher division, right?
Yes.
Seattle is now the leader in that division right now. And for the Chiefs, right now you're a couple of games clear, even with the loss of the Chargers and the Raiders and 3 of the Broncos who just beat Kansas City, but they're definitely in a much easier division.
So with that Seahawks team in mind, I want to go on the other side here. Who coming off this weekend should be the most hopeful going into the season? Remember, we got the trade deadline coming up tomorrow, so that's going to be a big kind of it's usually always one of those postmarks in the middle of a season for now what we do after the trade deadline with a lot of these teams. And you mentioned Seattle gets that big win against the Cleveland Browns defense that still looks like one of the best in the NFL here.
Defense looking pretty darn good, though.
Absolutely. And, factoring in the fact that it was P.J. Walker going out there at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. But still, Seattle's defense has played really well. Dad, who coming off the weekend impressed you most and should be feeling best walking into Week 9?
Well, I think a lot of people in Cincinnati are breathing a sigh of relief, saying, okay, took a little bit, and we get the first 2 games of the season because Burrow was 1-7 in his first 2 games in his 4 years. But they were still kind of coming out of the gate slow. This looked the most like, much like last night, it looked the most like the Chargers offense that we expect with Herbert and crew. This looked most like the Cincinnati offense that we expect, and the defense has been playing well as well. So I think Cincinnati fans can go, okay, we know we have it in there. We know we have the talent around there. They're coming through. You have Baltimore. Remember, every team in that division has a winning record. But really, you look at Baltimore at the top of that division and say, all right, that's who the battle is going to be with. But I think they may be breathing the most sigh of relief that this is our team, where Seattle fans are going, okay, San Francisco's coming us a little bit. We're playing well. But everybody expects San Francisco to just, run away with everything. But they came back to the pack and fell behind the pack a little bit now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is Cincinnati is the clear answer on this, and then it's a group of and also receiving votes.
Yeah. Because
we've been waiting for this. And this is the theme of the last 2 years. Like we kept saying it, and Cincinnati kept upping the degree of difficulty of how big a hole you could climb out to start the season. And I think on both sides of the football, you saw really good game plans, right? Like you're getting competent coaching from both these groups, from the Cincinnati defense. Lou Anarumo, that's nothing new.
Right.
But offensively, I think Cincinnati's been accused at times in the past of being overly reliant on Joe Burrow and those skill players, being a little bit vanilla in the way that they present offense. And instead, yesterday, you had them doing a lot of the stuff that tends to subvert a defense like the 49ers. Trap and wham plays up front, getting the ball out of the perimeter wide receiver screens, getting the ball out of Joe's hands fast. In general, he looked comfortable inside the pocket in a way, to me, that was the most encouraging of anything we saw. Because, Dad, we remember the Joe Burrow the first 3 weeks of the season dealing with that lingering calf injury from training camp, where he just never looked quite himself trying to step into throws and potentially absorb contact in the pocket. And yesterday, in the midst of the teeth of what's still a vicious defensive front, and Nick Bosa still was getting pressure on the quarterback, I thought you saw Joe look as comfortable as ever. And again, not to whittle it down too much because all the rest of the stuff that we mentioned matters, but that goes a long way with this team. We've seen he's that important of a difference maker.
Big Sunday night game now against the Bills. And we all remember that game last year with Damar Hamlin and the tragedy that happened there, averted tragedy afterward, obviously, because the best news in the world is Damar Hamlin is still with the Bills. He's only been active 1 game, but he's there. He's practicing.
Yeah, that's hardly the measuring stick
not
for
the
success.
Exactly right, but just trying to where he is right now playing, but just being back on the team, just being upright at this point of what went on. 100%. I mean, it's just so much more important than football. But that's a big game Sunday night.
So they're feeling very good. You're right in the Seahawks, which, by the way, shout out to friend of the program, Jake Bobo.
How about it?
Here's the definitive list. Shout out to Field Yates, ESPN NFL Insider, for tweeting this out. The definitive list of rookie wide receivers. Remember, we got a really good class of rookie wideouts right now. The definitive list of rookie wide receivers who have a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown this season. Jake Bobo.
Mm-hmm.
That's the list.
That's it. Friend of the program.
So, again, I don't want to whittle it down too much. We don't want to do a lot of oversimplifying on this show. Football's a complicated game with 22 people on the field, really weird-shaped ball, a bunch of guys wearing costumes. Jake Bobo on that list. At the same time, Geno Stone, our guy, Ravens defensive back, notches another interception, his 5th on the season.
League leader.
In the NFL.
Yeah.
This is what happens, all right? I'm just telling you, future potential athlete guests that want to come on the show here. We're not saying we started the fire for them, but we're going to keep it going. We're going to fan the flames for
oxygen on that
keep
fire.
The good vibes, the juju into all this. It can all work out for you.
So have your people contact our people, and we'll get you on.
Which,
do we have people?
Yeah, I think we got people at this point. We got people. Cool. Shout out to DK. You're our people.
We'll give Jesse's number out right now. They can call Jesse. Jesse, what's your phone number? Just tell us.
It's 91 and then another one. Yeah.
All right, just wait. They'll get back to you very quickly if you just call with enough urgency there and shout. Dad, I think the one team, and this is going to be a difficult prospect. By the way, I got to put my hand up as we talk about the team that won in this game. I don't know if my prediction about the Rams being a playoff team is going to work out.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know, especially now. And the real key for them is going to be that Matthew Stafford thumb bangs off the helmet of Mozzie Smith, the defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Really hard. Yeah, Mozzie Smith was coming around. Stafford was getting hit and really cracked that thing. They started to tape it up, but then as that game got out of hand in the second half, they sat Stafford down in the fourth quarter, and we're going to see what happens. That guy's played through a lot. Even after that thumb injury, went out and caught, I think, a 2-point conversion or a touchdown on a Philly special play where he was the receiver.
Yeah.
Caught it short, was diving
for the end zone.
Add it to the highlight reel of Matthew Stafford tough guy plays.
Seriously.
Like the bleep it Matthew Stafford highlights would be an incredible if you just did plays where you knew he was hurt and still managed to score complete passes. That guy, one of the all-time grit players at that position by far. But I don't think that team is going to make the postseason at the rate that they're going.
And
but
Cowboys look good.
And I guess, Dad, this is the point. Dallas wins 43-20 in this game. We talked about CeeDee Lamb looking great for them. Dak Prescott had one of his best games in a Cowboys uniform this season. Does it change anything for you after already having seen what they looked like against a full-strength 49ers team going out and getting beat the way they did? That game that's kind of stuck in everybody's craw.
That's what they're going to be
measured at. And I think will be for a while, is they're going to be measured right, wrong, or indifferent against two teams, the 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And we finally get the first of those two Eagles matchups coming up next weekend. But overall, did this do anything to reinstill any form of faith in what they can do on the top end for you?
Like anything else, you're not as good as you think you are, and they're not as bad as 42-10 to the 49ers.
Sure.
They're not. So they're not that bad, and they're not as good as some of the wins they've had either. So where are they? Where are they going to settle in? And this is a great test against the Eagles right now, because that's obviously their competition in the division. So, no, I'm not going to go back and look at that 49er game and say, well, that's more what I think the Cowboys are. No way. They have too much talent on that team. I think they're a really good team, but what every team wants, you can want it all you want, but you got to get there, is consistency week in and week out to be a good team and not have those gaffes that you have during the year, like a bad blowout, like 42-10 when they lost to San Francisco. I think they're more on the positive side than the negative side for sure.
They are, and let's put it this way with the Cowboys. We always talk about this a lot in college football, where because in that sport the schedules are so disparate from conference to conference, from team to team. Outside of those marquee out-of-conference matchups early in the season, it's always kind of hard to tell who's actually that good. We wait for some of those litmus test games. You got a bunch of litmus test games on the Cowboys schedule this season. They've already had a few, but you get the Eagles twice down the stretch here. You get the Bills on the road in December, and then the Dolphins the week after that. And then you get to come back home December 30th, right before you turn the calendar, and host the Detroit Lions. So you got plenty on the calendar if you're the Dallas Cowboys that's going to let us know exactly who they are. That's hell in a cell once you get to November and December for that team. And I'd even throw in, you get the Seahawks at home at that point too. So Dallas's schedule, quietly, as we talk about some of the NFC's deficiencies overall, they get some great crossover with the AFC East. That's certainly going to help on that. But they've got some teams on there. We're going to know exactly what Dallas is down the stretch of the season.
They're going to have to earn it, obviously.
Yes.
But, and the Seattle, just, how about them, though? It's just amazing. They just kind of, play the Geno Smith having the great year last year after you thought they were going to be rebuilding, and now here they are leading their division. That's the team that I just kind of shake my head at and say, man, I'm not sure where they are, but I know that defense is playing very well.
The defense is playing well, but then you look offensively, getting healthy. Got poor Charles Cross.
Yeah.
Former top pick for them out of Mississippi State. Great young player. Had an awesome year last year. Him and their other tackle, who were both rookies coming in last season. A huge get for Seattle. And he'd been banged up going back to the very start of the season. They got hurt in the first game of the year and end up losing. Finally gets to come back. And Myles Garrett is across the field.
Yeah.
It's just
Enjoy that.
like, maybe we need to rest for another week, coach.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he's not going to duck that competition. But it would be hard to blame him if he did, but he goes back out there and is healthy. DK Metcalf had been a little banged up. He gets back out there. When we talked to Jake Bobo, they felt the need to go out there and offset that. And so now in that receiver room, talked about future Hall of Famer Jake Bobo, friend of the program, what he had done there. Jackson Smith and Jigba starting to look like the guy that they took in the first round of that one. Tyler Lockett continues to be one of the most underrated receivers in football each and every year.
Because everyone wants to talk about DK Metcalf and how he looks.
Well, I mean, it's a hilarious group of bodies in that
really
receiver room where it's just the team picture. You've got to structure that wide receiver group photo very specifically because you got 6'4" Jake Bobo over there running a 4.99. You got DK Metcalf, who supposedly couldn't turn his hips and then has done nothing but it since he got into the NFL. Built like he's carved out of marble. And then you've got the little guys. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you got Tyler Lockett, who are both staring up there, wondering where they were the days that they handed out tickets to the genetic lottery in that receiver room. And yet here they are, and that complement of guys coming back while you've got them getting healthier on the offensive line and that defense playing the way they are. And oh, by the way, Geno Smith still, like, this hasn't turned back into a pumpkin. We are in carriage mode with Geno Smith, and it continues to look great.
Keep talking about weapons that you have. You just listed up. They do have a lot of good weapons.
Some dudes. Kenneth Walker in the backfield that we didn't even mention, by the way.
That's exactly right. It's been pretty impressive. Another weekend, though, too, really quick, we should mention of backup quarterbacks having to come in and play.
Man.
So
the meat grinder of this season.
PJ Walker in Cleveland. What's going on with that Deshaun Watson thing?
We say PJ Walker, like, we're going to include PJ Walker and Zach Wilson because they weren't supposed to be the day one starters.
Right.
They both had to start a ton of games. Yes.
And so you look at then Will Levis, who came in and did an incredible job, right, and got the win.
Yeah.
Tommy DeVito, who had the Tommy DeVito poll that he was going to end up in the game for the Giants.
Tommy DeVito, who the picture got circulated of him, I think from last year, of him wearing the underneath shirt that we can't say the name anymore that we used to call it because it's an offensive name.
Right.
Tank top, I guess.
Yeah, we'll call
underneath.
it that.
With the TD, Tommy DeVito or touchdown chain on there. I think I saw him described as the most aggressively Italian quarterback in the NFL.
At one point in the fourth quarter, they hadn't had a pass completion since the second quarter.
Yes, I think they finished regulation without a completion since the second quarter.
And the passes DeVito was throwing was passes to the side that were losing yards. It was just absolutely stunning. But then you have Bajent, who started for Justin Fields again for the Bears. You had Taylor Heineke for Atlanta coming in for Desmond Ridder.
Yep. Who went out with a concussion, cleared concussion protocol, but they didn't send him back in.
And then the game was already out of hand, but Brett Rippon comes in for Stafford, who had hurt his thumb. And now Jaron Hall is going to be your quarterback in Minnesota. Now that Kirk Cousins has blown out his Achilles.
That will be interesting to see if maybe Minnesota tries to make something. Based on where you were at the season, this will tell us a lot for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, their GM, and what that front office wants to do is, are you going to go out there and say, hey, we see you, team that had been playing well on the field right now, team that had been surging a little bit after that initial burst, and try and move. And I don't know who would be realistic. A lot of the same backup names we maybe talked about.
You know what people were talking about the possibility, but he does have an ankle now, is Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Let Will Levis be the guy. Tennessee trades Tannehill to Minnesota, but again, he's dealing with an ankle now. That's why he didn't play last week.
There's complications, but are they buyers, or do they look at the trade deadline and say, well, this is going to be us, and we'll accept what happens, and if that ends up with us tanking towards the top overall pick, then so be it. We'll work with that. So they're going to be one of the teams to watch. We're going to have a lot to watch, but I think we're right in that grouping really of Seattle and the Cincinnati Bengals, the biggest winners coming off the weekend, mostly because these aren't one-offs. These are trends in the right direction for Seattle, really the entire season and going back to last year. But for the Cincinnati Bengals, all of a sudden, the team that no one wants any part of. Coming up next, we'll look ahead as Sports Equinox is here. The NFL portion, Monday Night Football, next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. A couple weeks ago, we had Lomas Brown on the show. He is getting inducted into the Pride of Lions tonight in Detroit. Undoubtedly a major letdown last week against the Ravens, guys, but still lots of optimism in Detroit. Here's what Brown had to say on how the Lions are playing to start the season.
It's been faster than I think a lot of people thought, because you think about it, going into his third year, he's changed the whole culture around. I'm talking about from top all the way down to the bottom. And the fans, man, they're all bought in now. I mean, you can see how the fans travel. You can see how they show up at home games. We have a home field advantage now at Ford Field when the opposing teams come there. There's so much excitement here in the state of Michigan for this team. And I think everybody is bought in. It took a while because you had the same old Lions. You know, that just permeated here for about 30 years. Now you don't hear that anymore. People expect this team to win, and I think they expect to win when they show up each and every Sunday.
So pretty cool, guys. He's going to be inducted into the Pride of Lions, like I said. And teams around the NFL handle everything differently, okay? So Brown's going to be the 20th player inducted into the Pride of Lions, yet they only have 6 numbers retired, though 20 was worn by, 3 different players. The Bears, on the other hand, have 14 retired numbers. They're the Celtics of the NFL here. So, guys, lots of different approaches on how to honor these guys. What do we think about how teams choose to go about this differently?
Listen, I love these Ring of Honors. I was amazed a couple of years ago. Cincinnati just started one.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you wait that long to start a Ring of Honor? And then the biggest joke of all time.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
The biggest joke of all time is that Jimmy Johnson is not in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. I mean, the pettiness of Jerry Jones and not putting him in there.
At this point, though, kind of worth it to just never put him in.
Oh, no, you have to put him in.
I just feel like commitment to the bit. I would have more respect for Jerry Jones if he wrote into his will that no matter what, Jimmy Johnson can never go in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. I would have a weird amount of respect for Jerry Jones, who is absolutely doing the pettiest thing possible, but if you take it to the grave, it's different. Like, I have written into my will just to mess with my sister-in-law that if I die, she gets none of the money. It'll be funneled to my brother and sister, to my nephew Jackson. But Jenny actually gets none of it just to commit to a bit from life into death. That is codified in my living will.
Oh, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I'm committed to the bit. So, Jerry, step up.
No, man, Jerry, you can't. This is the biggest joke there is, and I don't want to get sidetracked on this, but at some point, he'll be in the Ring of Honor, Jimmy Johnson, because he belongs there. And that fact is one of the more ridiculous ones now. But I love Ring of Honors. Lomas Brown in the league forever. Such a great guy as well. So happy. It was great to have him on. We've been friends for years and years, playing against each other way back when. And just seeing what he's doing and being honored is great.
I couldn't imagine that feeling. Like, I remember thinking about this when Patrick Mahomes got his name put up in the Ring of Honor back at Texas Tech, where he went to college, and seeing it immortalized there. Because at Notre Dame, there's in the basketball facility, the Joyce Athletic Center, they've got upstairs this entire area that's dedicated to all of the past history of the university. So a lot of trophies from different teams, but then lining the rim of the ceiling is on the walls. There's wood paneling with the names of every Notre Dame monogram winner, every athlete that's come through that school and won a monogram for the university, regardless of sport, has their name and initials up there on that board, and it goes all throughout the years. And I remember as a kid, I used to go back and see yours and Uncle Bob's and Uncle Greg's and everybody that I knew up there. And one of my buddies just went back there the other day and sent the picture of our group that is now up there. And it was all my friends' names. It was me, my brother, and my sister all in a row right there. And I had a ton of pride in that because that is something that had grown up meaning a lot to me at that place there. And it was a much more attainable goal for your boy. And so I can only imagine what it's like looking up in the stadium, in this place where you went out there and put it on the line. And that's going to be there forever, that you're one of the most important people this franchise has ever had around you. Dad, you played with Ring of Honor type guys in Philadelphia with the Eagles and a lot in your career. Like, that's just, and for them, I'm sure it feels like, oh yeah, this is what I was supposed to do. This is who I'm supposed to be. But for the rest of us looking up, that's insane to comprehend.
I think the thing to actually look up and see it then, right? I mean, because listen, there was no doubt Lomas was going to be in this position, or other guys in the Ring of Honor, sans, Jimmy Johnson, that they knew they were going to be up there.
Free Jimmy.
And the way you look up there and see it, it's still got to be a cool thing, but you also understand that your ability, was going to get you up there, but to actually see it. And in all honesty, it's a very proud moment for your mother and I. We saw that picture of you and Jake and Sydney, all being up there as monogram winners. It's a neat thing. It's a proud moment, and you guys should be proud of that. But then you're right. To multiply that by how many,
exactly.
To see it in an actual stadium that will always be there, your name is up there, is just an incredible feeling. It has to be.
I always tell people, I know exactly what it took to be a dead dog average college football player. I can get you that far. The rest of it, we're going to have to rely on other people here. Let's look at the Lions team that's getting ready to play tonight here, Dad. 7.5-point favorites going into Monday Night Football against the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is one that we absolutely expect them to win. They got punched in the mouth a little bit last week.
Can't lose this one.
To this Raiders team specifically, right?
Cannot. Yeah, they just cannot. If you're going to be where you're going to be, and again, we started saying, well, Minnesota, boy, they're on a little bit of a roll, but they lost Cousins. So I think
they lost Cousins, and the Green Bay Packers cannot catch passes. Nobody gets open, and even when it's kind of close, nobody catches passes. So you should win that division going away. That's not the concern.
It is completely on you. It's not even about, oh my God, what are the, like the NFC or the AFC North? What's Cincy going to do? What's Baltimore going to do? Pittsburgh, Cleveland, what are they going to do? This is all in your hands, Detroit. All in your hands for you to take care of business, and it should start tonight.
So we've upgraded because we talked with Lomas about the expectation going into the season was win the division. That's the next step. You went from team that was a scrappy, tough out when Dan Campbell first got here to last year. All right, now you're winning games. You were in playoff contention down the stretch, and then you got to spoil the playoffs for one of your division rivals in the Green Bay Packers. This year you came in as the division favorite. That is no longer enough now, given what's happened to the division. Like we said, the Chicago Bears we saw last night, not built to party.
Nope.
And so now, coming off that measuring stick loss to the Baltimore Ravens, where you got thumped, and a lot like we said about the Cowboys, they're probably not
as bad as that.
They're probably not 38-6 bad
in
a game where they were drowning early that one and never able to overcome. They're probably a little bit more of a game script dependent team than we gave them credit for, even on the high end, as people were trying to argue for them as the best team in the NFL. But you got to come back out and reset and take care of business. Because I feel like when we talk about good teams, we focus so much on what you do against good teams, the quality opponents. I think the measure of good teams, no matter where you are, is a lot more of how do you just handle the teams that you're supposed to beat week in and week out. And that's what the Raiders are. They're a team you're supposed to check off as another box in the
They're not the plucky underdogs, are the Detroit Lions, to win the division. Now, when they win the division and get to the playoffs, which they should do, then we can start talking about, okay, they don't spend a lot of time in the playoffs. So now they're going to be underdog looked at from that respect, that they're not in the playoffs an awful lot. But, I mean, the expectation, they should be running away with that division. Now, in all honesty, now you kind of look at where you can be positioned in the playoffs. That's where they should be thinking right now.
You don't have another difficult game until you play the Cowboys again on December 30th.
Right.
The rest of your schedule is your division, which has struggled, and then you get the Broncos from outside the division, you get the Saints from outside the division. So there are a lot of wins to be had for the Detroit Lions. But again, people are going to remember what happened the last time you were with a contender. It's your job to go out there and erase all doubt with that. Have that defense come back to life a little bit more. Have your offense, which the most stunning part to me of that Ravens loss, and it shouldn't have been because the Ravens lead the NFL in sacks. They're a phenomenal defense, but the Lions' offensive line is very good. Personnel-wise, what they've been since they've got there, that's part of the foundation of the turnaround. And so that group, if nothing else, going up against Max Crosby and what he is as a pass rusher, I think them going out and answering the bell, reasserting that confidence goes a long way tonight. I'd take them, Dad. I'd take the points they're going to be part of. Spoiler alert, our Sports Equinox parlay that is up on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. The NFL leg of all four major sports in play right now, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, or not Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL. That's our NFL leg. We're all locked in on that.
And as you said about wins against teams, they should be double-digit wins when they won their 3 in a row, but then got smoked by the Ravens, and their loss before that was the Seahawks in overtime, 37-31. We see the Seahawks are a pretty good football team.
Seahawks are. So there's a lot on the line there. As the NFC picture gets a little more interesting than we gave it credit for going into the season. Good matchup and a good test for them tonight. Coming up next, let's brace for the Equinox right now. It's the perfect juncture of fall, and we're going to lean all the way in next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's a special day in the world of sports. All 4 major sports are in action, aka it is the sports equinox. Amazing. Let's bring in our friend from VSiN, Gill Alexander. He's host of A Numbers Game on VSiN, comes up right after our show. Gill, thank you so much for being here, and happy sports equinox.
Happy sports equinox to you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, Gill, is this a day that you celebrate with great joy here every time the sports equinox goes up?
It's like a national holiday, for God's sakes. Of course. Absolutely.
I mean, we have enough fake national holidays, by the way, that this could fit right in with all that.
Should we be explaining it, or do people understand this like the scoregami?
So actually, you know what? It's a great question. So first off, for anyone unaware, the sports equinox here, we have all 4 major sports at play on the same day today that everyone can take part in there. We've got a little parlay that we're going to have Gill grade for us here coming up momentarily. But Gill, you're a man of great taste here. So I have to ask, does NFL scoregami mean anything to you? Because my father's been warring against it.
It does not mean anything to me personally. I don't know if that's a product of a function of my age, which is probably closer to your father's than yours. But no, in my little betting corner of the world, it does not mean anything. It's a curiosity, though. I'll give it that much.
So is this going to be one of those that we're going to get age shamed because we don't dive into this thing like you younger generation guys do?
You know what I think it is we just came up obsessed with dumb stuff, and this fits into dumb stuff that we might find fascination with, the same way that I was once in love with Pokemon cards that my mom threw away. We're not going to get to that. Instead, we're going to get to Gill, more of what you do here. Every week you guess the NFL lines for the upcoming week on your show. I'm curious for you, what goes into that? What are you taking stock of? How are you going about? What's the process like in trying to go out and guess these numbers?
It's what it is I stay in a cocoon from the end of the football games to yesterday, really midday, into this morning. And I'm just taking furious notes about everything that happens in each NFL game. I am purposely in a cocoon because I want to come up with what I believe the line should be organically. Then Monday morning, when my producer Kelly Bidlin tells me what the line actually is after my guess, in that sort of exercise, there ought to be some value extracted. Maybe not at all some weeks, but in some weeks there is. And so far this year, with the exception of 1 week, that exercise has worked very well towards getting us winners.
So for you, what's the most important factor? Everyone's got certain things that they value looking at football teams specifically, without giving away too much of the secret sauce here, because like you said, it's been very lucrative and people should check out the show if they want to get more of that benefit. But what are some of the key things that to you are indicative of a team that you're going to trust and the reason you're going to think the way you do?
Well, with all sports betting, I want to know I want to try to ascertain what is sustainable and what is unsustainable. So if a team has a turnover differential that has allowed them to win football games, just putting it in the most simplistic terms, that's not something that I'm going to weigh heavily. In fact, I'm going to assume it's going to regress to the mean. That's just the one basic stat to begin with. But there's so many other things. Offensive line play is really sort of the hidden thing that most folks don't latch on to. So there's a lot that's sort of below the surface that you won't necessarily hear in mainstream media when it's more of a reactionary narrative week after week.
You come to the right show to talk about offensive line play, baby. Speaking my language, Gill.
As soon as you said that, Gill, I thought, oh, no, why would you do that? How do you put into play, like us, as when Mike brought up before, ACC teams playing on the CW are losing, favorite teams, right? So you see a trend like that. Does that go into your thought process at all? Me as sitting there looking at it going, okay, I'm betting against the next favorite team that's playing on the CW. I mean, that's how simple I am. But where does that go into your train of thought?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because most sports betting media will latch on to what we call trends. Some others call it technical analysis, but trends is what it's known as colloquially. And the reason that they latch onto that is because it's a simple little nugget that makes people feel like they're smarter than they were moments before knowing that. In truth, I would say probably 5% of trends actually have any predictive value to them. So in many cases, I use those as sort of leading as a reflection of getting people to be led down the wrong path. Trends can be very misleading, and most of them don't have enough of a meaningful sample size to really equate to any predictive value whatsoever.
Do you think he was just being nice? He was really ripping me there and just being nice about it?
I don't think he's ripping you as much as I think it appears he doubts the power of the CW and its collective might. And so fans of One Tree Hill are probably going to rise up in anger at Gill, but he can deal with those in his own way. He's got the ability to handle all that stuff. All seriousness, Gill, you mentioned some of the things that you look forward to. Which team in the NFL jumped out in a way that to you is indicative of sustainable success from some of the things that we saw this weekend? We've talked about some of the surprise teams, fan bases that should feel good. Whose success from this weekend looked most sustainable to you?
Well, this is not going to be any breaking news or news flash or anything unique that I'm going to say today, but it's clearly the Cincinnati Bengals, right, who have been doing their thing where they lay in the woods and lay in the weeds, I should say, and then here they are, Joe Burrow looking as healthy as ever, this team looking as good as ever, go into San Francisco and win handle. I mean, he carved apart that defense. It was unbelievable. I think 28 for 32, I believe, was his final number, which is his highest percentage ever, 87.5% completion percentage. But this is a Bengals team that immediately makes you think, with other teams stumbling, by the way. The Niners have lost 3 in a row. The Bills don't look particularly elite right now in the way that we thought they might. Kansas City loses to Denver. All of a sudden, you take a step back and you're like, oh, this team could absolutely win it all. Absolutely could.
All right, we need to be graded now, don't we?
Yeah, and I'm a little nervous based on the way that we've presented
me too.
Our idiocy.
Yeah.
Gil, who's joined us here and been kind enough.
And Gil, we want you to be perfectly honest, too. We don't want you to sugarcoat anything here.
But I sugarcoat it a little bit in case people want to support us on this. All right, so we've decided in honor of the Sports Equinox to build out a parlay. It's on DraftKings Sportsbook right now that you guys can bet, where we've got an NFL play, World Series, NBA, and NHL on here. Gil, this is what we went with here. We got Lions minus 7.5 against the Raiders tonight. Big bounce back coming off that thumping against the Baltimore Ravens here. We don't think that's indicative of who they are long-term. World Series under 9 runs tonight in that matchup in Game 3. We got the Lakers minus 2 against the Magic in the NBA. And in the NHL, we took Connor Bedard minus 150 to go over half a point against, I believe they're playing the Coyotes there. So how are we feeling about this one, Gil?
Okay, I'm going to do them one by one. Detroit Lions minus 7.5. I love. Amon-Ra St. Brown might have the flu. He's questionable tonight. That's not good, but I'm still with you because I think Detroit's a bit of a bully like Miami, like Dallas is. As far as Connor Bedard, I'm probably not the go-to guy for that, so I'm going to assume that's going to be okay. He'll get you 1 point in this. I also really I enjoy, what was the second one there? Was the baseball game, the under.
Baseball,
I like under on the World Series.
Yeah. Under 9, because I think Brandon Pfaadt has just been spectacular this postseason. We obviously know what Max Scherzer can do. I'm on the Diamondbacks, quite frankly, in this, but I expect a lower scoring game than I do a higher one because I think the bullpens will be used to perfection tonight as well. Where I think we might run into an issue is on this Lakers one. And the reason for that is because the Lakers are back-to-back. They played into overtime last night, and we're already talking about a team that has some sort of vague LeBron James / AD pitch count kind of thing. So I'm a little worried about that. Orlando's 2-0. They've got proper rest tonight. That's the one where it was a little precarious, in my opinion.
Can we change it?
All right, there we go. Hey, listen, we locked it in right here. We're going to blindly walk in. It's early season, regular season NBA, so we kind of threw that one up there blindly, if I'm being totally honest.
I feel like I'm sitting in class and I'm looking at Gil's paper and cheating off him and had an answer down and look over and saw a different one and scratched mine out and put his.
See, I feel more like what I used to get, which is when the teacher hands you the paper back and it's covered in red and you just kind of look down and you know, all right, we got carved up. But overall, feeling pretty good about that. Yeah. I think we can walk into this confidently. So again, that's up on DraftKings Sportsbook. You can check out our card if you want to rock with us. You can check out our friend Gill Alexander on a numbers game. It follows us right here on the DraftKings network. Gill, thank you for the time. Thank you for helping us out here and making us smarter. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. There's also a VSiN Equinox on the DraftKings app as well. Check that out, too.
Oh, there we go.
The VSiN.
All right, I got to ask, who picked our Laker one?
Listen, don't worry about that. We're not going to lay blame here. I'm not here to throw. Listen, we're a team.
Was that you?
Which means we present a united front.
Whatever.
I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. I don't know how you get down.
Your fault.
Coming up next,
your fault.
A man who had maybe the best weekend in sports on and off the court. Next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the Boston DraftKings studio. It's time to finish off the day with this, that, and third, the way we always do. 3 quick stories, send you off on into your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you miss any of it, and our great guest, Gill Alexander, joined us from a numbers game that follows us right here on DKN. If you want to just leave it on, Gill's got great stuff.
There you go.
Probably a lot smarter than both of us.
He probably is, but also play our parlay.
Right.
Yeah.
Go and do it.
I'm going to throw a buck on it.
Sometimes just do it because it feels good.
There you go.
Our motto is don't overthink it.
In fact, don't think at all.
That's what my therapist tells me. I haven't listened yet, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, you are an overthinker. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm sure overthinking it would actually be more money for them, but that's a story for another day.
Mike, I'd like you to overthink for the next hour.
Let's get to this, that, and the third. And let's start with this incredible moment in Sports Weekend. The renaissance of Flavor Flav.
Yes.
As of late here, as a card-carrying Swiftie, watching him over the summer, join up with the Eras Tour, get to hang out and meet Taylor Swift. He actually, over the weekend, received the Taylor Swift re-release 1989 Taylor's Version gift box, which included the 1989 light blue cardigan that he actually put on there. Triumph.
How many of those you think are given out? How many do you think those get
I'd say, there's probably in the hundreds there. I'm sure. I didn't get one yet, so we'll work on that.
Have you seen anybody in the meet? Because you know how it is in our circles.
Yeah.
They post it when they get something from Ted Lasso or something.
I don't think we've seen a lot of that because I don't know if anyone I know in sports media is quite famous enough to pull that off here. But Flavor Flav was in that group. And Flavor Flav was also famous enough to get a unique opportunity. The Atlanta Hawks played the Milwaukee Bucks over the weekend. And the Bucks invited Flavor Flav, the former star of Flavor of Love.
Yep.
The former frontman for Public Enemy, out to sing the national anthem. Not exactly what you'd think of with Flavor Flav. And, Dad, it was an interesting performance. I think like we saw, who was the football player that sang? It was Marcus Ware at the Hall of Fame game there. Right. This is an A for effort type thing for me. My only thing that was funny with Flav was he went the long route. Like with the national anthem, as someone who used to play in the band, the whole thing was this dedication to the timing of it. You're supposed to go at the speed there. We always do the over-under bets for the Super Bowl. You would have had to hammer the over for Flav. He was going to get every last drop out of it.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I did not hear it, so he went a little long, huh?
Oh, he went very long. He went very long on that.
I don't know how people who are friends of who's singing the national anthem don't make a ton of money, right? Because they have insider info. Right?
We're talking about the Super Bowl.
Because you can bet on the length of the
they keep that under lock and key. I remember last year at the Super Bowl, me and Brandon were going around Super Bowl opening night, and we saw one of the security guards that had been there for the national anthem rehearsal, and we're trying to pump them for information, and they wouldn't budge there.
I believe that, but if you're singing the national anthem for the Super Bowl, I guarantee you damn well you're telling me what it's going to be.
Listen, I have integrity, all right? I'm not trying.
Yeah, no way. No way.
No way, no how. Jesse, did you hear Flavor Flav's anthem?
I did, and it was reminiscent of, I would say, perhaps when Fergie sang it, and there was some people who were having some trouble keeping a straight face.
I have not heard it, but in both your guys' description makes it sound like it was not very good.
You know what it was? It was brave, and I appreciated him putting himself out there. This is not his strong suit.
You're really not trying to criticize at all.
I liked his approach to this. He tweeted after he said
his job. He's a singer.
He's not a singer.
He's a rapper.
Flavor's the hype man for a rap group.
Right. He's an entertainer.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
The anthem was a bucket list item for him, and he said, "I can't live my life worried about what people might say about me."
Listen, I'm all for that. I'm good with that.
It doesn't sound like you are.
No, I didn't listen to it. I'm just basing on what you guys are saying, and you guys are both making it sound like it wasn't very good.
It was brave and it was entertaining. And that is what
I think better than most people would do.
You know what I haven't heard? Either one of you say it was good.
Let's put it this way. DeMarcus Ware, I thought, did a better job.
Okay. All right.
It was good entertainment.
Okay.
And isn't that what we are all here for?
Yeah.
Let's get to that. That is news that'll make Duke Blue Devils fans happy. John Shire and company landed a commitment, the number one overall pick number one overall prospect in next year's class, and the favorite to be the number one overall pick in 2025. Cooper Flagg has committed to the Duke Blue Devils. So, Dad, the post-Coach K version of Duke appears to still be in capable hands. They appear to still be a place that good young basketball
go
players
get that one.
go.
Listen, we saw
one and dones.
We saw it out of Kentucky for how many years, right? The one and they would have starting fives of one and dones, basically going to draft the next year. I mean, really incredible, or five on the team. So yeah, you get the one and dones here at Duke, and I'm still waiting for that rule to change. And when we're going to lose someone like that, or in the area of when you can start leaving high school after high school, going back to the NBA, because I have a feeling that's going to be back at some point.
It was, for him, that decision not made at this point. So like you said, we didn't go down that path yet. As far as the college teams for him, it was between Duke, UConn, and Kansas for him. Obviously, UConn,
that's
you're
a nice
defending
trio right there, right?
Good spots if you can get it. And listen, Storrs just coming off another national championship, you could argue has been the preeminent team of the 2000s.
And we're also seeing more in this day and age, guys either heading over to Europe or going to the G League, right? Out of high school and getting that year in before they can go to the draft in another way and not from college.
So he's a 6'8" forward from Maine, and he reclassified. So he's not going to turn 18 until December of this fall, or December, of his freshman year. So all of that in an effort to make him eligible. That's one thing I feel like we've seen a lot more of across football and basketball.
Reclassifying.
Is guys reclassifying to get there earlier because they see all the money there. Guys are more prepared than ever coming up earlier because of all the different apparatuses and because of how much of a business even high school athletics has become. It's just amazing how fast these guys are growing up. Where he's going to turn 18 in December of that year, and then a few months later is going to be the number one overall pick in the draft.
It is amazing that these guys are going forward now, when it used to be the big thing, and I'm sure it's still done when parents hold their kids back, a year or so.
Yeah.
To try and gain a little bit of time.
Yeah, I could say the old sports red shirt.
Yeah,
I think they call it the Texas red shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
So congratulations to Duke. It's a shame nothing good's ever happened.
I know. They're just trying to trudge on through.
All right, let's get to the third here.
Yeah.
Dad, we got an announcement today.
We do.
Kim Kardashian's brand Skims has announced that they are a multi-year partner with the NBA, the WNBA, and USA Basketball to be the official underwear partner of the NBA. Wow. So if you're out here rocking drawers, you're going to be rocking Kim Kardashian's drawers.
The money that family has been making, and listen, kudos to them. I mean, they became unbelievably popular. They turned it into incredible business acumen and business decisions. I will ask, Jesse, is it still talked about wearing the Skims, now with women? Is it a more of a... Yeah, I'm
and men, as someone who's worn man Spanx before, please respect my commitment to the culture.
Yeah, I would say that it used to be taboo. You didn't talk about it. Right. It was like your Spanx were hidden, Spanx, Skims, whatever, they were hidden. Now it's definitely, you can just talk about it. Say, I got 2 pairs of Skims on underneath this dress, keeping it all in there. But Skims also... has just clothing items. Like they have dresses, they have blah, blah. And last week they did release their first ever men's collection. So this announcement comes on the heels of the first ever men's collection. And just for, we talked about mad money, Skims was valued at $4 billion at their last funding round in July.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on.
By the way, to Jesse's point about men, and I remember I saw this from last week, Kim Kardashian premiered her Skims for Men campaign, which featured Neymar, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Nick Bosa. Well, so Nick's going to be out. Imagine Christmas time for the 49ers. The fellas going to be rocking Skims out in the locker room. It's like when Tom Brady used to give everyone Uggs. I'm sure Nick is going to have the most robust Skims packages ready for everyone to go.
Thing too, and you see someone like Nick, because when I do their game, see him in warm-up. You're going to see him in that, and everybody's going to think, can I look like that if I put some skins on? Let me just tell you.
He's like the mannequin that you see in the store rocking the Under Armour stuff.
No, you can't look like him, okay? Don't let that kind of marketing suck you in. If you want to get him, go ahead and get him. Enjoy it, man. But don't think you're ever going to look like
Well, it's
that
not
guy.
just shapewear. It's also just like really comfortable underwear.
But shapewear?
Yeah. See,
it's not just shapewear. It's also just comfy undies.
To keep it all in there.
Well, you know what? And to that point, Kim, if you're watching, I got a lot of flavor to seal in. I would love to help you market to the bigger boys, the thicko community, our large nation of lads who are just looking to go out there and look sharp and feel great about themselves in your comfy clothes. Not an ad, but it could be here. This is an ad for you to download, subscribe, rate, review our show, though. Leave us a 5-star rating if you feel like we sealed in all the flavor. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.